Ashley Gattuso. We are joined here today by Ryan Sager. He publishes the Newspackr newsletter for media makers, and he has a consulting firm called Montague Street Media. I'm told it has nothing to do with Shakespeare, and I'm very disappointed in that. But that consultancy plus email revenue solutions are both about helping people who publish newsletters, optimize them, and make more revenue from them. So excited to have him today walking us through his newsletter and talking about some of the tips and tricks that our audience can use to improve and build a business out of your newsletter or take your hobby to the next level. So welcome. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks so much for having me, Ashley.
So I want to dive right in, but first, can you explain like the consultancy? I know I tried my best to explain your businesses, but if you want to give us like a background, what got you here and what each of these, like the goal of your newsletter and then what the goals of those two businesses, Montague Street Media and Email Revenue Solutions, wow, I got it right, are all about.
Sure. So, my background in the industry is coming up through sort of big media. I worked at the Wall Street Journal for a long time and Time Magazine. Then I cut out from big media to do some more entrepreneurial work. I worked with a company called Ladders to build a news site there around kind of the future of work and the workplace. And a big part of that journey was creating a newsletter there, a daily newsletter that we were able to monetize pretty successfully through, through direct, sold, and programmatic email advertising. And so while we had on-site advertising, banner ads, et cetera, the real money in that was on the email ads. And so after I left Ladders, I looked to take on projects mainly in the email space about growing audiences and growing monetization on email. So Montague Street Media is sort of my personal consulting shingle for helping anyone who needs help on strategy and execution for either growth or monetization. And then Email Revenue Solutions is with a partner of mine, and we serve as an outside sales team for usually sort of medium-sized newsletter publishers who have substantial audiences, but not necessarily fully built out sales teams who can go pound the pavement and bring in sponsors. So we go out there and do that for them and then work on sort of a commission model.
Ooh. So what's medium size? Not what's medium.com, but what's medium size?
Nobody knows what medium.com is. Medium.
It's had an identity crisis.
But what I mean by medium size is sort of 50K to 500K. And broadly speaking, I think there's sort of a meaty middle of that, around 200K list size newsletters where sometimes you have an independent, just a owner operator or a small team, and then that's enough volume to be selling some serious advertising, but it's not always a team size where you've got a sales team or even a salesperson.
Right. So I was reading something earlier today about the Washington Post's platform, which was called Zeus Performance or something like that. And it was really interesting because Jeff Bezos is behind that. And they just launched some new ad, like apparently like it's first party targeting across every newspaper that gets on this platform or something like that. So I think you're right. It's interesting what the landscape of advertising is going to look like. So I'm excited for our audience to kind of learn from you in terms of email newsletter advertising, what you think will be happening. I got your newsletter earlier today, so I'm stamping this, like this is the timestamp for this interview. It went out on December 8th, so you can go find like the archive if you're not subscribed to Newspackr yet, which we'll put a description in, a link in this description. But on December 8th, he put out 21 predictions for 2021, and they are hilarious. They're like newsletter predictions, and some of those had to do with kind of the newsletter platform industry and the ad industry and what we're going to be seeing. So very comical stuff in there. But in terms of advertising, we are going to kind of dive deep because you've written some stuff about how to monetize your newsletter, what kind of ads to run, things along those lines. So everybody, like, get ready. It's going to be a fun ride.
Cool. Yeah. So, I mean, part of what, discussing today's newsletter and what I've been thinking about a lot in the industry is this question of how do you monetize these smaller newsletters? I mean, I think you've obviously got the high end. We've got the the new players like a Morning Brew who've done a tremendous job, and then you've got some of the old media, which New York Times, Wall Street Journal, or just anyone who's kind of a legacy media company who has a huge list. And I mean, first off, for the companies that are these legacy media companies with a huge list, I actually think often they're missing huge opportunities on email, because email advertising to them, I think for a long time has been very much an afterthought to trying to sell really fancy display advertising, and God help us back in the day selling print advertising. So email tends to get sort of shunted off to, we'll run some live intent in there, we'll run power inbox. I mean, we're talking all industry folks, so you know what these things are.
Yes.
And so these are these programmatic platforms that, I mean, look, if somebody has a huge list and they're not monetizing it, you will get some money out of it. But it's pennies on the dollar versus what you would be getting if you invested in direct sales, hiring a direct sales team, and ran more native, modern advertising. Having a banner ad or one of the little live intent rectangles is going to be paying you pennies. And you really should be selling something that looks more like Morning Brew runs or Hustle runs.
Yeah, and the targeting is like super off sometimes. Like, I'm like, why? How did I get chosen for this ad?
Yeah, and I mean, I guess they must think I want to buy Allbirds shoes. I don't know. I never had.
Excellent. Well, and in some ways that to me feels like a return to like these intentions of journalism in the first place, which was to create quality content that then attracted certain readers, that then attracted certain sponsorships, and lines up in that way, which is much more organic and oftentimes I think much more likely to be acted on.
Right. So I mean, not to pick on anyone, I should, not pick on anyone.
Go for it. But we'll edit it out if we feel like we might get like legally attacked or something.
No, but I mean, and I don't mean to be so negative on live intent, but it really is, it's a mass solution for if you don't have a more direct relationship with your audience. So, why is a, Smarter Living, like a New York Times Smarter Living newsletter, which I don't know their subscriber figures, but you've got to figure it's in the many hundreds of thousands. Why would they run live intent instead of investing the resources and really selling native stuff to that audience? And you just see it, mentioning that, but you see it across almost any major publisher's newsletter when you're talking about legacy publishers. So, first off, I just think the legacy publishers have a huge opportunity with email, millions of dollars a year across their main newsletters, across their verticalized newsletters. So that's one part of the industry. Then there's this, what I'm calling this medium middle of the industry, where you've got some bigger newsletters that tend to be some medium-sized newsletters, hundreds of thousands of subscribers that are topic focused, vertical focused, whether that's financial news briefing, whether it's a health news briefing, whatever your topic area is. I think they are in a great position to sell these direct ads. And then you've got and this is the part of the industry I'm not sure how to tackle myself. It's probably not something I'll personally tackle, but it's the smaller newsletters when you've got sort of the, honestly down to 1,000, 2,000 subscribers up to 25,000 subscribers, 50. You're seeing a lot of entrants into the industry trying to figure out, like, okay, you've got a million of these newsletters, not literally, but you've got thousands, probably hundreds.
It could be.
And how do you take these newsletters who have audiences, who have very targeted audiences in some cases, how do you help them monetize themselves? And then how do you, get a slice of helping them monetize themselves? So we're seeing, I'm not sure a week goes by I don't come across or get reached out to by some startup that is trying to tackle that problem. And it can be tackling it as an agency, collecting a bunch of these newsletters. I think probably it ultimately needs to be tackled as a tech platform where you're probably going to want to serve these native types of ads. And so you kind of need to create a live intent for a better looking, more native feeling kind of ad, right? Instead of just sticking a rectangle in, you need to do the thing that,
Yeah.
again, everyone here I'm sure has looked at Morning Brew, that looks like, an item in your content newsletter.
Yeah.
Sponsorship. The rectangular, banner ad, whether it's an email or on the web, I mean, we just all know what the click-through rates look like on that. And, we're all used to it on the web. We're all used to just the horror of going to a Daily Mail article and what you're going to be assaulted with on your computer. But it's, seeing it creep into email advertising. I don't think that's the direction the email industry needs to go. And I'm hoping people, keep steering away from that.
Interesting. Yes. Okay. So cool conversations about ads and revenue. I want to dive into your newsletter with a screen share. We may get back onto sponsorships and look at some things that you've written about sponsorships and kind of go through Newspackr. Newspackr, you guys, if anybody's reading my opt-in weekly, we kind of overlap in the content categories. So it's going to be like our new challenge, right? To see who provides like a unique thing that the other person didn't get. But I am encouraging people on my list to subscribe to Newspackr because it is going to be additionally helpful to you if you are launching or maintaining a newsletter. Great little header design, includes that Montague Street media. That's how I found Ryan in the first place. But it's really quite informative. How often is this coming out? Like monthly?
Yeah, I'm doing it monthly. It's sort of an undertaking, probably more than I could do once a week at this point. That was obviously a big question when you start out, right? What's your frequency? That's honestly, it's a huge question. I think most people end up choosing weekly, or if they're not, obviously a lot of people choose daily. Monthly is a little less common, I think. I guess just trying to think of who I know who does it. I mean, Dan Oshinsky does it with Not a Newsletter, obviously. And I think that's sort of the model I'm trying to do. I'm trying to pack a lot into one thing and give you a lot of resources and you kind of write a central article inside of it that I then, put on my website, and it's archived and it helps grow some SEO, hopefully. So the idea was, it's not something I'm trying to sell ads on. It's not something I'm trying to run sponsored content on. It's not something I'm trying to run affiliate on. So for my purposes, I guess I should state my purposes. I mean,
what's your goal?
The idea is to, this is an industry I'm in that I care a lot about and that I have things to say about. So to say them and to, in doing so, get visibility for Montague Street Media and my consulting business. So, I'm really never trying to sell a product here, but obviously this has been, I started at the beginning of this year, my sort of business New Year's resolution was just like start a bunch of experiments, like just do a bunch of new crazy stuff that I haven't done.
Yay.
So this has been like, honestly, a much bigger success for me than I had anticipated. I mean, it's sort of everything else I'm doing, every project I'm working on, like more or less one way or another came down to starting this newsletter. So it's been, it can be work, a lot of work, but it is, it's definitely achieving its goals for me.
Excellent. Great. And what I want to point out to people is that you're going monthly. This is issue 9 we're looking at, but when did you start? January or February?
I guess I must have.
I feel like today's might have been issue 10. Does that
today's was issue
sound
10.
Right? So
March, I guess.
Okay, so very pandemic-y startup. But so what I preach to people and what I've had a few good conversations with people about is that you want to give like any project you do time to evolve and time to tell you things. And so especially if you're going out monthly and you've had growth, like that's a great signal that this is hitting what you want it to hit, but to also have like that patience and assurance that you're testing, like you're using this as a tool to test if it can achieve its goals. And that newsletters aren't something that you can just go like, hey, I want to start a newsletter. 5 weeks later, it did horrible, I'm quitting. Like that really, you should kind of have a perseverance mentality just to get like a year's assessment out of its abilities.
Right. I mean, no, nothing, I definitely don't expect anyone to see huge growth out of the gate unless you're, like, if you have a, 50K, 200K Twitter following, like, yeah, then then you
Right.
can
If you have an
probably
audience you can bring to it to start
But if
with.
you're,
Yes.
I hate Twitter. I've stayed off Twitter for years. So, Twitter is a cancer on our society. But sorry if anyone loves Twitter or you work with Twitter. I detest Twitter. So I've never, come to it with that sort of, following or trying to build it that way. So yeah, I mean, I can walk you through kind of some of the parts here.
Yes, please. Let's scroll. Is there a way that you could zoom in? I have like old lady eyes and I've had them since like 3rd grade. I'm an eye doctor's daughter who had horrible vision. Like I could not see the different leaves in trees, and they're like,
you. For you?
No, that's like, that might be one too many, but we're good now. I just know how this will look on YouTube for the people who haven't expanded the screen yet. And I want them to see Newspackr and for that to stick with them.
So, simple self-made, header here, just made in Canva. I had the logo for the company developed a while ago on 99 Designs. I use Fiverr a lot. I think this one's 99 Designs, but a logo I was happy with there, and just used Canva to integrate it into a little banner for the newsletter. The way Revue works is this is actually the pre-header, and so that prints as part of the newsletter when you open it, but it's also pre-header text, and obviously anyone reading this knows fill out your pre-headers.
If you don't, like, you talk with me, like I'll explain it one day.
So yeah, I mean, your pre-header is definitely something not to forget about. It's the thing that shows up after your newsletter's named in the Gmail and other previews, and so gives you a second cell after your subject line. So I always do a little intro letter, and then I typically put kind of a full-length article next, a little art from a free photo site, usually Pexels is one I use a lot. Then these are all sort of individual content blocks here. I always love a numbered list. It's easier to write, it keeps things structured, keeps things bite-sized for people who might want to skim. And
so is that first content in your newsletter usually like the organic, you created it bit right there, like below the hello? So I know that's your hello, and then you have like an article that you've written, correct?
So this is something I've written that's a new piece of content that I'll eventually archive on my website, hopefully getting some SEO benefits. But the meat of this is, here's an article with some kind of really actionable kind of nitty-gritty tips from somebody in the industry doing this stuff every day.
Right.
So, I've done how to write subject lines, I've done how to monetize with subscriptions. And so this one focused on how to sell ads and email, something I've got some experience with. And again, just sort of keeping it very bulleted and numbered. And then moving into the more aggregated part, I like to give you a couple of the last articles that I've run recently, published articles of mine from my website, Montague Street Media. And then I wanted to give a structure to sort of the link roundup part of this, which is grow, engage, and monetize.
Okay.
So trying to keep those things in sort of logical order. You can't do anything until you've grown your list and gotten some people reading you. So I try and find the 3 best stories on growth for you to read, and then the 3 best stories on how to engage your audience, which could be email deliverability, it could be social media, just anything about how to stoke your audience, keep them interested, have them. And then
can I just interrupt? I'm so sorry. But the emojis that you use, I laugh every time I see engage, and maybe it's just my brain, but I go, oh, that's so clever. So kudos to you on the clever ring emoji for engage. I don't know if anybody else gets a little pun thrill from things like that, but to me, like, emojis can be great visual puns, and you nailed it.
Yeah, they're fun to sprinkle in a little bit. And then monetize, just, you've got your audience, you're hopefully keeping them engaged, keep them opening. What do you do with that to make money and support your business? And so again, the first, try to find the best 3 stories on that. The next section, I just try and do industry news, pick 3 to 5 stories that are sort of the big stories in industry news. Since it's monthly, obviously it ends up being a big focus on the last week. I'm going to try not to send you something that was at the beginning of the,
like super stale.
like 28 days old. Probably seen it by then, or it's another, if it's really important, it's in another section newsletter. So, some big news from last month, insider buying, morning brew, quartz getting sold, that kind of stuff. And, sometimes it's a think piece about the industry, sometimes, Digiday, obviously, a big source. And then 3 tools I've bookmarked. So this is, obviously any of us working in email, media, especially anything where you're sort of using these no-code tools like Revue, like any of the no-code tools we're all using. Nothing better than a cool tool that you come across. And so try and pick real ones that I've used or bookmarked for later use in during the month. And so try to put the best 3 I've found every month here. And then closing out, so these are guides that I put together. Honestly, these just started as an internal tool for me. Like, what are the Slack groups? What are the Facebook groups I should be in? So I had a list for myself, and I just figured, other people in the industry probably want to have the same list. So I just put that together into and these are just hosted public Google Docs. That just kind of sends you through them and how to sign up and a quick description.
Nice.
Same thing for different email media newsletters. And if you have one, send it on. I'm speaking to one right now that I'll add to the update of that.
Yes.
And then, not every month, but if there's something funny enough, I try to stick some kind of, finally, whether it's a funny GIF or somebody's good Twitter thread. And I'm I just want to note that GIF is very important, that's with a hard G. And if you pronounce it with a J, that is not correct.
My CEO says it's J, and I've been conflicted because I always said GIF, right? And now I feel like, in order to, not that he would fire
don't
me.
Be bullied. Don't be bullied.
Not that he would fire me, but that he thinks that is proper. I feel like a lot of pressure. So now I find myself saying it different ways to different audiences. And it's like being an actress, right? It's like trying to remember what accent I'm supposed to be using at a given time.
And actually, I love this. The Gmail, the clients as cakes was.
Yes, although this is now dated because Gmail is it's new multicolor. Yeah, this is Gmail of November 2020. That segues that segues actually quite nicely into your issue that came out today and the 2021 predictions. And I was going to ask you if you would mind showing us through that and kind of reading out or describing a few of them just to give people a laugh. This, in my idyllic vision, this would be like Letterman's, top 5 and throwing.
Sure.
But, you can feel free to have a little less personality.
That's fair. It's coming from the home office.
I don't have a drummer anywhere near to accompany you.
So this is just a cop. This is the back end that I build in. And, again, with the aggregation tools, I just bookmark things throughout the week or throughout the month, and they show up in this little tray, and then you drag them into your newsletter.
Do you have those connected to like aggregation tools like Feedly and Pocket and things like that as integrations, or do you curate some other way?
This is done through a Revue browser Chrome extension. I don't know if they can, I don't know if it plugs in Feedly if you want to. I'm a Feedly
It
user.
does.
I'm a Google Reader mourner, but I moved to Feedly when that died.
It does. Those are some similar things you can do. I
Right.
know that for Curated, that you just have to set up a zap. And it's like every time I collect a Feedly, send it to my collected items or something like that. So I'm fairly certain what you're using can do that too. But I always find it interesting who goes through multiple layers of filtration and who just like dumps it all in one place and then sorts through it, because I think it reveals a lot about how our brains.
Yeah, no, I try and put everything to one place. If I were in another system, I would set up a whole zap contraption to get it here, because I don't want to be hunting around while I'm writing. That's like the time consuming part of this. There's a phone app also that lets you like do this thing.
Oh, good. Yeah.
So yeah, so I mean, it's the back end is WYSIWYG, so there's really nothing much to go into there. But
and
so
we
yeah,
had Hung Lee of Recruiting Brain Food a few weeks ago. It's like an HR and marketing newsletter, and he went into great detail with the same platform, showing how everything works. So I've got like a lot of research done through this process.
It's very, the WYSIWYG part works pretty seamlessly, but so again, trying to just do an intro, just speaking to the moment that we're all talking in, and it's just this. I feel like this GIF really sums up the year in email, in this trying time and this unusual time, and hopefully we'll be out of that time soon. So so I went through. This is different, pretty different than what I do in most issues where I'm trying to be very useful, and this is sort of not useful in any way, shape, or form. But
it was hilarious.
But if it makes you laugh, that's useful. So, each of these items sort of does speak to something, real in the struggle. The struggle is real. So, just the first couple here, the race for earlier and earlier syntax would finally be won when someone's schedule was theirs at 11:59 p.m. So, and then the race would begin again. So, obviously we've seen there's so many morning newsletters, and like, sometimes you can tell they're testing a little bit of an arms race. Like, what if it goes up at 5:29 a.m.? That's,
right. Because if you're delivering similar content, or if you're just wanting that attention, like which one is optimized for grabbing that attention? That's interesting.
Right, or go a little later because maybe you want to be the top one in the Gmail inbox. And obviously this year has just totally scrambled what we know about people's reading habits. If there's something I read when I was commuting last year, I'm reading it at a totally different time. What does my work from home look like as far as reading patterns? I'd actually be really interested to know from first of all, from open rates, but Flipboard had some really interesting data on like their usage times, and very heavily concentrated in like morning and afternoon, like evening commute times. So I don't know if that was a lot of train readers in cities, because hopefully it's not people reading on their phone in the car, but it was very pronounced, and that actually played into our publishing strategy at Ladders, where Flipboard was a huge referrer for us, and we were actually playing that sort of, if we go at 4:30 a.m., like does that hit the Flipboard algorithm like totally differently than going at 6:30 publishing times? And maybe some of it was that there's a certain amount of an Asian audience in that in the regional audience for Flipboard that was then algorithmically carrying over to the US, or maybe it was hitting the commuters differently. I don't know, the mysteries of the Flipboard algorithm. Anyway, so we all are looking for that optimal send time, and we actually, again, to go back to the Ladders experience, we had such a big list that we were able to do really detailed time testing, and we ran experiments where we segmented out the audience and did like every half hour mark from 6:30 a.m. to like 10 p.m. And time and time again, 8 p.m. was like the total sweet spot for reading about your career and like the workplace. I guess people just like on the couch in the evening thinking about, stressing about tomorrow. For whatever reason, that was, I think every newsletter will probably see something different. And like all the morning newsletters have obviously found that to be really successful. But just our finding, like 8 p.m. was an awesome send time.
Yeah. I've had emails be successful at 8 p.m. I also think it's kind of interesting that we obsess about send times, because it kind of like wrecks my vision, like this childlike ambition of just create something good enough for people to open it at whatever time it arrives, because they look forward. But everyone's newsletter has a different goal and a different set of competition and nuances that like make open rates important. But I think that's funny. So pop-ups.
Yeah, pop-ups. Yeah, subscribe now. Pop-ups will continue to infuriate users, except for all the ones who subscribe. What you find in sort of, I don't want to call it dark pattern user interface, but it's the really intrusive stuff that people hate. There's a reason it gets done, and that's because it works. That definitely doesn't mean like be super intrusive with your pop-ups and write horrible clickbait headlines. But you do have to sort of accept the reality of the parts of that work and make your balanced trade-off based on not, you want your audience to like you and not annoy them until they unsubscribe. But
don't write an article about how bad pop-ups are and have a pop-up on the page.
Yes. So at least have it go a 3/4 scroll.
Yeah, at least.
I should look into the like exit pop-ups, because that's the absolute worst, but I'm sure they work well too.
Yeah, those don't bother me as bad, because I know it's just this last attempt. That it's like their last attempt. Like, oh, you don't want to be here? Are you sure?
But they do work, unfortunately, and if you want to stop seeing them, just never ever fill it out.
Yeah.
And are we PG-13 on this one?
I don't know. I haven't decided. Like, I don't let my daughters watch them, so we typically.
No, item 3, I'll skip over reading it, but
well, essentially, what he's saying there that you can read.
Sure. Yeah.
Is that Gmail is our worst nightmare sometimes, because we're all like trying to stay out of the promotions tab or the junk folder, and it's becoming an obsessive thing. And we know as a software, like what we can control and what you can control and what is really out of our control. And I don't know. Two of the things that we have just talked about are things that are like highly reliant on human behavior or other big tech that governs how we act. So I will just say that there's a pattern there of tech creating hurdles that we have to jump.
Right. And it's interesting because I talk a lot about, even in an evangelical sense, that, email is this great platform because it's not intermediated by the big tech companies. I mean, the truth is it's the least intermediated by the big tech companies.
Ooh,
but
great
Gmail is constantly intermediating, whether we're getting into somebody's primary inbox, God forbid, spam and promotions, which you hear, mixed things. How many people really have tabs turned on? I don't. I hate them as a user and as a publisher. But I've definitely seen that if I know something went to the promotions tab, it's getting a lower open rate. I mean, I don't really buy the argument that, not that many people use it, or if it goes to the promotions tab, that's where it belongs. It's really arbitrary where Gmail sends things, and you're going to see a lower open rate from it. So
I love the what about your spouse going into labor?
Yes, well, luckily I didn't know about deliverability when my wife had our dogs. So. But they will not appreciate your deliverability joke, and they will name the baby middle's name as unsubscribe May, which is little for any Twilight fans, Renesmee is how I'm thinking.
Oh yeah,
that would be pronounced.
I'd forgotten about that.
I only know it from the movies. I have not read the novels.
Sure, we believe you.
Yes, and the new rewritten one. So actually, to go back to the tabs, I do want to, while we're screen sharing, show a real neat tool to deal with the tabs problem. It is a tool I recommend to a lot of people, gmass.co/inbox. And it is a tool where you take these 17 email addresses that they have set up. You can put them on your main email list. You can stick them into a deliverability testing list, which is what I do. And you send your email there. You send a test email to these letters, and it will pop up here. Did you make inbox? Did you make spam, or did you make promotions? Or I guess those are the only options. Well, there's the updates box, which I think that one actually very few people have set up. That another tab Google has created for us.
So revelatory.
And so this is just the difference between whether you hit like all promotions on these 17, or whether you hit like 7 inbox, the rest promotions, or getting all inbox, will just make a huge difference in your deliverability. And so this is a tool I recommend to people to give, to test things before they're sending. And in my own use of it, it is great that it works. It is infuriating in that it's like, it is, you have to pick apart your email and add each part back individually. You have to figure out if you're hitting some crazy trigger word that you've never thought of before in your life that's causing you to go to the promotions folder. And it just it seems extremely arbitrary, like which headlines, which pre-headers Google uses to, or how its AI is parsing this.
Interesting.
So it's really difficult.
I just had a thought, okay?
Yeah.
And that is that deliverability and where you're going, inbox, spam, promotions, etc., is kind of the email newsletter equivalent of writing for SEO for blogs.
Yeah. It's like SEO, except it's even weirder, because SEO at least has, Google will sort of obfuscate and lie all day about how they're making their SEO decisions. I think Gmail is probably even changing by the day or the hour. Like who knows?
They don't even have control of it anymore. It's like it's AI. It's adapting itself.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I then think that it's appropriate to term these things like beasts in our daily or our weekly. These are beasts we have to encounter and overcome, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, we talk about email is not intermediated. It is, and so, I mean, the good thing about this compared to SEO is like SEO, you have to do the work for 6 months and then wait another 6 months to see if anything comes of it. At least this is sort of instant feedback. Like, oh, I had the word 5 in there, and for some reason it likes 5 and it doesn't like 7. It's at least you get instant feedback.
Yeah, but it's like pleasing a toddler.
It is. It is really like that. It's really like this one.
It's the wrong yellow crayon. I wanted this yellow crayon.
Exactly. It's a lot like that.
Very cool. Okay, so what I want to do, because I know we could, like, this is amazing, guys, and I want you all to go read them. They are hilarious. Maybe we can scroll through and hit a few more. But what I want people to do is go find your newsletter and read it. So we're going to use this as like a teaser at this point. I just made an editorial decision right here that we are teasing this piece of content. So any more exciting ones? Oh, I like the 10-11.
Yes, the email will be proclaimed and the death of email will be proclaimed.
Yes, which is just a cyclical, all the time conversation that seems to be happening.
At the same time conversations.
Exactly. That's hilarious.
I mean, I won't read the whole item, but maybe this is a jumping off and anything.
Well, you know what? I think that this could get us into a conversation about bundling, unbundling, and kind of what you think about advertising in terms of bundling and unbundling.
Sure. So, I mean, one of the items here is just kind of a joke. Obviously Substack has been one of the big stories of the last 2 years. And as we see big writers go there and bundles emerging, we're sort of reinventing the magazine in a sort of this backwards way where all these writers are getting together and, putting out a product together and charging a subscription. Well, yes, that is the magazine industry that we had for a long time. I think it'll fall apart a lot more quickly. And, I think, Substack is a interesting platform, but one I guess I sort of direct clients away from when I can, and that it's, unless you're somebody huge coming there, unless you're one of people getting their like really top promotion in their ecosystem, it's not going to be a gateway to a huge new audience. And if it is, you're going to quickly outgrow it and wish you weren't paying them quite as much of a subscription fee and that you had a lot more control over your tech. And so, if you're growing something that you want to turn into a serious business and you think you can get 5,000, 10,000, 20,000 subscribers, don't get locked into a platform that's, pretty limiting. I mean, do a little digging, learn how to put together a tech stack and choose an ESP, choose something that you can use to gate your content if you're doing paid, and put a little more effort in up front, and you'll probably be a lot happier in a year from now.
I have nothing to argue with you about what you just said. Talking about bundling and unbundling and advertising sales. If you're bundled with other writers, or if here is something I'm contemplating. How do you feel about not bundling, but bundling advertising sales? So in other words, someone is buying across 10 newsletters at one time, but that is being split between those creators proportionally to their list size.
Sure. So again, you see a lot of companies sort of entering this space with different angles. I mean, obviously there's, the angle of being a publisher, and you either build or accumulate a bunch of emails in a bunch of email newsletters across a couple of verticals. Maybe you want to have 5 to 10 verticals in like a B2B sort of configuration, and you want one to cover education and one to cover retail sales. You could create a publisher that sort of bundled similar templates for the newsletters, similar advertising formats, and a central sales team doing all of them. And that's certainly one way to get some efficiencies. But then you see a lot of people trying to kind of put together platforms, bring together 100, 500, smaller newsletters to all be listed on a platform. I mean, you see something like that in Letterwell. I don't know a ton about their business model, but you kind of have a directory. The newsletters submit their statistics, open rates, list size, and then you can kind of reach out through Letterwell, and I'm sure they take a cut or something, and you kind of deal with the newsletter. Other places are trying to do sort of networked models where, again, you get a bunch of newsletters together, they exist on a network, and then the network owner has a relationship with the sponsors and says, well, look, I've got these 50 newsletters, do you want to run across all of them or a subset of them? And then, like you're saying, allocate the profits according to list size, or if people are running like cost per acquisition campaigns, maybe you're allocating it by who drove the acquisition. If it's a firm where every acquisition is worth, a $50 bounty, then you allocate it by a newsletter that way and take, the network would take some cut, obviously, there. So
Okay.
a lot of these are in their infancy, but a lot of people are tackling this problem.
Okay, so as someone who works with clients to try to kind of help them navigate this world, because let's face it, a lot of newsletter creators, like, I did not get trained to sell ads as a journalist. Like,
Right.
NYU wasn't saying like, and let's go to ad sales class now and you can figure out how to like self-publish and monetize your life or whatever. We were all just like, what's a blog? Like, blogs were these brand new things back in my time at that period in my life. So the question would be, what is your advice? Like, what do you commonly come across with clients? Like, and what do you advise when they are getting started trying to figure out how to seriously monetize their newsletter? My guess, and I want to know if I'm right, is kind of like that you shouldn't be thinking about selling sponsorships until you've kind of established the newsletter in the first place, like content strategy, and let it find its voice. But I want to know your take, because I'm not always right.
No, I think that's fair. I mean, you're not going to have any luck if you don't have, the audience together, if you don't have a defined sense of who you're reaching. Is it, are you reaching iPhone enthusiasts? Are you reaching people who are into no code? Are you reaching, marketers? Obviously you kind of have to have your audience pretty well defined. The smaller you are, the more defined your audience has to be, right? If you're 10,000 people and your general interest, it's like, oh, anyone reads it. The age range is 20 to 60 and all income levels. Nobody's going to buy that, because they, if they want to get something that broad, they're going to go somewhere else. If you want people who are like super likely to buy a certain kind of SaaS product, then all of a sudden your smaller audience is worth a lot to the company that wants to sell them that SaaS product. So whether it's sort of B2B like I'm talking about there, or whether it's more consumer focused financial news or health news or whatever, basically the smaller your audience, the more narrow your focus has to be in terms
Okay. So are you helping people with content strategy? Are you also doing like any sales push assistance or training them on how to sell? Like, how does that all work when someone engages with you and your businesses?
Sure. So what we do with email revenue solutions is we engage as outside sales for a publisher. So into one of these medium-sized publishers in the couple 100,000 range, they contract with us as outside sales, and we go out and sell their inventory. And it's basically as simple as that. I mean, if they have a sales team in place, we work in conjunction with that. If they don't have a sales team, we go out there and we're the only ones in the field with it. But so that's the clients we work with. If we're just talking about if I'm advising somebody, maybe an earlier stage company, which more I would do just in my consulting business in Montague, then I would be talking to them about, here's how you need to define your niche, here's how you need to grow this audience, and probably a lot of the stuff before they're actually selling. And so I mean, and even just to give advice to people who aren't necessarily the ones I'm working with, if you're a smaller newsletter, if you're doing your first sales, don't worry too much about what you're getting in terms of a rate. It's much better to start filling your inventory, having advertisers run, having it look to readers, some of whom might be your advertisers, to have it look to them like a valuable space, something you want to advertise in. And then once you fill, you can start inching up your rates. So, don't get, overly focused on, oh man, Axios.
Pricing strategy and
CPM, which for people, cost per mil, cost per thousand users, they're selling at a $200 CPM. Great, but they're Axios, and you've got to kind of, you've got to deal with getting there.
Yeah, I think also there's an advantage to like taking those baby steps and learning how to manage relationships with sponsors, right? Like, what data are you giving them and in what way? What workflows do you need to build around that so that it's less one and done and more repeat placements and things like that. So if you try to go at it full throttle, then you've not given yourself time to like hone those
Right.
processes.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, definitely repeat business is the key to it. You want to find a sponsor that really fits with your audience, and then they'll see the results. I should also mention, kind of the kinds of advertisers we're talking about. I mean, there's a big difference between the world of like your major consumer brands, your Procter and Gamble, your Fidelity Investments, who are, these places are, a sponsor that big is typically working through an agency.
Mm-hmm.
They're usually working with a media agency who's doing all their buying for them, running multi-million-dollar campaigns, putting out RFPs, requests for proposals. Can be a 6-month, a year sales cycle to like close something like that. So the email space, I think people are more successful when they focus on some of these direct-to-consumer brands,
Mm-hmm.
people who you see in other newsletters buying a lot in the email space. Like if you're in a space and you're looking to sell ads, the first thing you do is subscribe to your 5-10 biggest competitors, and if they have advertising, their advertisers are your targets, because those people are looking for new audiences within their niche.
And they've already advertised in newsletters,
Right.
at like roughly
Super
your size or in that niche. So there's no like, let me convince you why you should advertise in newsletters. Like somebody else has already gotten them across that bridge.
Right. You don't have 2 sales conversations. Like, why should I do anything on email? Because I'm not even an advertiser who does email yet. That's, man, you want to have that on top of like, why do I want your email?
Okay. Well, is there any other advice that you would give? I love that you're playing the game. Like you are producing a newsletter while you are consulting with people. I think that gives you that depth of knowledge that people need to see and need to trust from someone who they're going to get to advise them. Any other advice you would just give, like some lesson learned or spare advice that you feel like, wow, if I had known this when I started some of these things, that would have saved me like 3 months of my life?
Just don't be afraid to experiment. I mean, I think just everything is about experimenting in this field. There's so much available to you in terms of no-code tools. I mean, don't get, the nice thing about operating in small media now is, it used to be you had to hire a developer to go out and build your website or to go out and build your newsletter. Everything can be done off the shelf, no code. Just, pick a vendor, don't obsess, and go out and give things a try and experiment.
Yay. I love that. There's a lot to be said for like jumping in and doing a thing instead of like contemplating about it for like 2 years and then
Right.
everything has changed. Like just find out if it's for you. And yeah. Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I typically put links to all of your site, so we'll have Montague Street, we'll have email revenue, we'll have Newspackr. People can go find that. And also, I think I'm going to toss in like some of your more recent articles. Just for people to kind of get an idea of what it is you're producing, let them learn more about you. And really, we encourage people to put questions in the comments. So I will ping you if someone asks like a really insightful question or even a stupid one for you to answer. And we'll try to keep the conversation going over on YouTube. But again, Ryan Sager, thank you so much. We appreciate your time.
Thanks a lot, Ashley.